Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to another adventure in history. It's been a fun week. Been an interesting week. Hope you are all doing well. I hope that the world is treating you nicely and giving you all of the good things of life and not the poopy things of life. Hey, Cave Geek, good to see you. Yeah. So the show is Adventures in History. I've realized that I'm sort of off mark here. I need to move over a little bit this way. Ooh, I'll talk low, Tuna. That's good to see you. How are you, Tuna? Hope you're doing well. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so this is Adventures in History. And we talk about history, and we goof off and have a good time, and I show maps, which is sort of one of my things. I won't tell anybody, I promise. Yeah, so one big thing, one big change. If you can see, this beautiful thing right here is an office chair. Look at there. Yeah. I am no longer sitting on the wooden kitchen chair that I've been sitting on for the past year plus. I now have an office chair, and I have to say, just like right off the bat, it feels a lot better to sit in. So my butt is sufficiently hugged. Yeah, it's got the little like butt wings that sort of like give you butt support. So yeah, this is coming by way of Kilted Preacher mod here in the chat, who came into another chair and had one to get rid of, and just happened to know somebody that was looking for an office chair that's a bit spendthrift and didn't necessarily want to go spend $400 to get a good office chair. So I have, new to me, very grateful gift to the future of Adventures in History. So thanks, KP. I don't know if you're in the room or not, but I appreciate it. So yeah. Other than that, it's just been sort of a weird week. Not a bad week, just a weird week. Lots of work. Lots of emails this week. Hey, Vipers. Yeah, butt care. It's good. You gotta take care of your butt. It houses your sciatic nerves and all that stuff, and those things can get really tricky if you don't take care of them. It can hurt really friggin' bad. So, something we gotta make sure that you take care of. Take care of your butt. It's a lesson of the night. I am a little bit delirious. I have not been sleeping well at all. For like the past month, I have just not been consistently sleeping very great. And I've been in the habit of going to bed at my normal time, but waking up like super before my alarm clock, which doesn't make any sense because I'm tired. And you would think, like, brain, go back to sleep, but it doesn't work that way. So, alas, it is what it is, and we got what we got, but there we go. All right, so tonight we are going to talk about some of my absolute favorite history stuff. This is stuff that I like to teach. This is some stuff that I have been lucky enough to teach on an upper level in college. So, like actually in-depth level college, not just introductory level college. I have been lucky enough to teach a lot about this period of time to some students that are deeply invested in history and really interested. And I hope that I can convey some of my excitement about this period of time to you. My love of Persia is quite old. It's one of the first things that I really latched onto when I got to college. And I was studying this so much that some of the people that I knew kind of started picking up on it. And one of the guys that I knew from a job, I used to work at a coffee shop. Hey, Sci-Fi. Used to work at a coffee shop, and one of the regular guys that sort of came in, and I got to know him pretty well, was in the military and pretty high up in the he ended up going to work for the NSA, and told me that if I wanted to learn Farsi with my love of Persian history, that he would get me a job. So, yeah, for a little while I considered the NSA, but then I got back to this whole thing of, can you really have a marriage relationship? No, you can't really have a marriage relationship in the NSA. You can't. No. It would have been like some desk jockey thing in the back corner. I would not have been like Jack Ryan on the field doing mission work. I'd probably be stuck in a hole listening to grabbed audio samples that had been pilfered off of some satellite somewhere. I would never see the light of day. You hope you went Goodwill Hunting on him? I actually don't mind Goodwill Hunting. I know that a lot of people hate that movie, but I think it's actually pretty good. I don't specifically know what Goodwill Hunting on him meant. Hey, Uncle Bill, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. You would be Jack Ryan on the mission field taking those recordings. Hey, Figment, good to see you. Hope you're doing well, too. No, I would never have ended up at some high-level position. I would have been a grunt-level analyst at best that translated stuff and tried to make sense out of it. And I don't even know if they have those so much anymore because everything has shifted to digital, so... you would have been Mr. Bean. Hey, Meg, good to see you. How are things in your neck of the globe today? Hope everybody's doing well. I really do hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, so I really like Persia. And Figment has actually been in some of the like upper level history classes where I've taught this stuff before. Or actually, I don't know if you were in that. No, you were there. You were there. I think it was another one of our friends that was not there when we were doing that. So, you love that movie. You're referring to the scene where he's offered a job by the NSA and tells them why it's not. Oh, yeah. Okay. I follow you now. Yeah, because he's a mathematical genius and all that stuff. Yeah, so you were there. It was our friend whose name starts with a K that was not in that particular discussion when I taught that stuff. So, all right. So, again, we're doing history. We're covering history from the beginning. We started over a year ago back with, humans being barely brand new. We had just sort of sprouted off from Homo heidelbergensis and didn't really even know what to do. We just sort of wandered around Africa for tens of thousands of years. But we've made it all the way up till the 3rd century, which is the year 200 to the year 300 of our modern era, where the numbers are going up. And because we can't cover everything like year by year, we are doing it by century, and then we are moving through that century by region. And over the past few weeks, we have started over here in Japan. We talked about Japan and Korea. We talked about China. We talked about Southeast Asia. We actually talked about China for 2 weeks because I love that stuff. Last week we talked about what's going on here in India and the rise of a whole bunch of new kingdoms down in India that are going to be fairly short-lived. But the big thing that we talked about last week was the collapse of this big empire which sat right here, which used to be the Kushan Empire. And tonight we get rid of another one of our longtime friends on Adventures in History, the Parthian Empire. Now, Parthia had been in really bad shape for quite some time. If you've been hanging around, you'll know that Parthia had become basically the punching bag of the wider world, that the Kushan Empire had taken most of what would be the height of the Iranian Plateau, the regions today that are basically all those countries named Stan. Rome had taken from them most of this northern region up here in Anatolia. Rome was forcing this region right here, which is Armenia, to be independent, even though Parthia sort of wanted to claim that. And Parthia's power was effectively limited only here to Mesopotamia and a little bit over here into what is modern-day Syria. Spent years wandering around Africa. Ibn Battuta. Ibn, so it's IBN, Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta? Is that you? Ibn Battuta is about 1,000 years from where we are talking about Moose. He is traveling around in the early part of the Renaissance. He and Marco Polo are roughly contiguous in time. They are both going to visit the Yuan dynasty of China, specifically meet with the guy Genghis Khan. Not Genghis Khan, his grandson Kublai Khan. Apologize. Genghis had long been dead at that point. Crash, is this a party? Hey, Techman. Yeah, we're going to play the Marco Polo pool game now. Is there a common theme to the big rise and fall changes? Technological, social, religious? There is to a certain extent, Meg, and the short answer is that in the ancient world, without instantaneous communication, it's just too hard to keep up with an empire, right? And there is, and I don't know if there's a specific distance limit that we can add, because we also have to include, geographic terrain. So if I said 100 miles, 100 miles through the mountains is different than 100 miles over the plain. So we can't necessarily directly apply this to a bubble effect. But there's just as much as a person can hold. Even if you are the world's best leader, there is only so long and so much territory that you can hold. Smaller equals more dynamic, faster response. Correct. So the distance in time that it takes for your information to come from the border is going to be directly related to how quickly you can respond to threats. So if there's an invasion from the bad guys, if it takes 3 weeks for people to get to you, that means your fastest response time is 6 weeks, because you're going to have to get the message and then on the same day have an army sitting around to be ready and then have them march out that same day. And usually they're not going to be able to march as fast as a messenger who would probably be riding on horseback. So the fastest that you could get out to the border to defend this place would be, a month and 2 weeks. Yes, this is exactly why Rome built roads, Brittany. That is exactly correct. The primary purpose of the Roman road system was not so that people could move goods around on it. It was so that they could move their army faster over flat, straight lines. Yeah, to get to the other side, exactly. So the response time is a big deal, and when we look at big empires like the Kushan Empire, we even have to zoom out a little bit. They're controlling a territory which stretched up here into what is modern-day Kazakhstan, and then all the way down here into places like the big ancient city of Pataliputra, which is way down here in India. So just to get from one side of this empire to the other takes weeks, if not a month or more. So the ability that any of these leaders had to quickly respond is limited. We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. Why the Mongols invented the Pony Express. Sure, but it's also fair to note that as soon as Genghis Khan died, his entire empire, which was the world's largest empire and is still the world's largest empire, which was all of this, as soon as he died, it fell apart. Now, the rest of the Khans still claimed to a certain extent that they were going to give, allegiance to the Khan of Khans, but that was a fiction at best. And most of them started going out to do their own thing. Over here you have the Golden Horde, which is a merging of the Blue Horde and the White Horde. You have the Il Khanate down in here. You have Chagatai Khan, who starts his own little world. Of course, Kublai is going to end up taking over the Song dynasty and basically reuniting China under Mongol rule. But that's a whole other thing. Very basically, you can't hold all of the land all of the time. It's just not possible in the ancient world without instantaneous communication. Even the best governors and the best military and the best response time isn't enough. Shaka Khan, right, dominating the pop charts. Humanity's drive to deliver force prioritized over delivering help. Yeah, pretty much. Um, the the big technological innovations of humanity very frequently come out of warfare. I mean, that's the reason we moved into the Metal Age. Um, People were using bronze and gold and stuff like that for a long time in the Stone Age, but it wasn't until they figured out how to get enough of that metal to make tools and armor out of that culture kicked over into the Bronze Age. You know, before that, it's just pretty. When you have a tactical use for it, then everybody wants it, right? So, yay, tangents. You all know that I do not mind the tangents. I love the tangents. I sort of live in the tangents. All right, so Parthia is falling apart. The Romans have taken a large chunk of their empire. The Kushans had taken a large chunk of their empire. Armenia had expanded. Things are getting pretty rough for Parthia. And then comes this guy, Ardashir. And you might be wondering, wait a second, didn't we talk about him last week when we were talking about the Kushano-Sassanians? This is not the same Ardashir. Ardashir is a very popular name in the Persian language. And this is not the same Ardashir. The Ardashir that went on to be the first king of the Kushano-Sassanian dynasty is probably a cousin of this guy. We're not 100% certain exactly how they are related. So Ardashir is going to be the Shah of a region called Pars. And this is where we get all of these Pars, which is, of course, a pun on the title of that great Ed Sheeran song, All of the Stars. And if you're wondering, like, wait, Shane said Ed Sheeran, I don't think the guy's music is that bad. I know a lot of people hate on Ed Sheeran. I think that the only thing that I can really say that confuses me about Ed Sheeran is I don't really know why there's such like a teen heartthrob thing for the guy, because he kind of looks like a redheaded hobbit. But, I mean, his music is okay. I'm not going to go buy a CD or anything like that, but nobody buys CDs anymore. Anyway, the region of Pars is right around here. This sort of south-central part of Iran today. Let me throw up the borders today. We can show you where Iran is. All right, so this is Iran today, the modern-day country of Iran. So this region right down here is Pars. And this region had been sort of a heartland for the Persian Empire for quite some time. If we go all the way back to the Achaemenid Persians, the original sort of Achaemenid Persians, with Cyrus the Great, he was from this area right down here. The Parthians were not really. The Parthians came from another family group that was not necessarily from this region. I'd have thought of you, of all people, would understand hobbits becoming a sex symbol. I mean, I get that, but it is. Iran's... and Iran. Except it's not pronounced Iran. It's not a past tense sentence. Neither is Iraq. It's ear on and ear ok. So, there we go. What is that? What is that emote? Oh, it's a red jar emote. Okay, cool. Cars, the band? I thought they were French. Oh, man, there was an Albanian exchange student when I was in high school that was such a big fan of the Cars. Interesting guy. Interesting guy. He lived through some rough stuff in the early 90s over in Albania. Interesting guy. Anyway, so right down here. And Ardashir is going to take a few steps to really begin what he would be really famous for, and that is effectively ending Parthia. The first thing that he's going to do when he takes over is move his capital city. He actually moves his capital up into the mountains. This region, if we zoom in on it, you can tell is very rugged. Has a lot of geographic change, and there are a lot of really, really narrow passes through the mountains. You know, if you're trying to move your army through here, this is a pretty rough area to try to invade, right? And when he puts his capital city up in the mountains, he's doing this very much on purpose. He also builds this really big wall around the city, and he's going to use this as sort of his his version of Angband, if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings and the big bad guy Morgoth. Literally picked it up and moved it, not just built another. Correct. Yeah, just throw it in the back of the truck and we'll get it there. Maybe Leonard Nimoy could have sung it and air on. Yeah. They did have elephants. The Parthians had access to elephants, but were not necessarily all about using the elephants. Elephants had become a bit outdated with the rise of heavy cavalry. I mean, I understand that an elephant is sort of like the heaviest of cavalry, but their massive impact on the battlefield was not necessarily going to be felt as much. Just like with healthcare, access to it doesn't mean you can afford it. Right. Elephants take a lot of work and a lot of food, and the cost-benefit analysis of using an elephant in warfare when you are in the Iranian world it's a little bit slanted away from elephant. Hey, KP, good to see you. So anyway, moves the capital up into the mountains with some very narrow passes that he defends with some fortifications, and this is going to basically make him effectively unassailable. He manages to get a big supply of food and water and tucks it away just in case, but he doesn't really need it because he's going to begin expanding out of the Pars region, and he's going to start moving sort of up this way towards the Persian capitals. Now, the Parthian capitals were right around this region right here, and is a place called Ctesiphon, and it's spelled with a C at the beginning, so it's Ctesiphon, Ctesiphon. And as Ardashir is moving north, he is collecting rebellious provinces. There are a lot of people that were sort of done with the Parthians already, and Ardashir was a pretty strong guy that is really getting a lot of support here. Chair is working great. I said a big thanks at the beginning of the stream, but I did not know if you were in the room at the time. So this is Ardashir, and it's important that we note a few things. Number one, the language of use here is not going to be Greek. This is going to be the good old-fashioned Persian language. This is a designated change. Like, we are no longer going to be associated with the Greek people. And this is an important mental issue as well, because Ardashir is very much going to consider himself sort of a revival of the old Achaemenid Persian Empire. So this is the Persians of Cyrus and Xerxes and Cambyses. This is the Persians of the movie 300. Ivalazi, I absolutely agree. Sassanids are some of my favorite people in ancient history. Really friggin' love these people, historically speaking. So we've got our good Persian legend here. Also, we have this big thing. This is ostensibly a solar disk, but specifically this symbol is a symbol that is very frequently used when the Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda is depicted. And when we see Ardashir displaying the image of Ahura Mazda, what he is actively trying to say here is that he is either divine in nature or that he has been chosen by the gods. And we all know how that works in the ancient world, right? You know, you get chosen by the gods, and this means that you are a person of destiny, and this is going to bring in all of these, you know, right, like, not that Mazda. Zoom. Different Mazda. This is the head deity of Zoroastrianism. Modern Zoroastrians would call him effectively the only deity. At the time, Zoroastrianism was going through sort of a polytheistic phase. One of the interesting things about Zoroastrianism is that it really has sort of evolved over time. If you look at some of the most ancient texts that are attributed to the guy Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, whatever you want to call him. It looks from just first glance at some of these oldest parts of the Avesta that Zoroaster is implying that there really is only one God, and that there's a good God and a bad God. So there's like Ahura Mazda, and then there's Archiman, which is the bad guy. But over time, as Zoroastrianism expands, and you get these influx from especially things like Greek culture and especially things like Hindu culture, you start seeing Zoroastrianism expand its pantheon, and you get people like Mithras, who was a really big target of mystery cults, and Anahita, who was a really big goddess in Zoroastrianism. And then after a lot of crazy stuff happens, and I don't want to spoil what happens to the Sassanids, but if we look at modern Zoroastrianism, they've sort of given up a lot of that polytheistic slant. So it's a really fascinating religion, and I absolutely love studying it. We love elephants, lovable weapons of mass destruction. So much literature. Yes, the Persians, specifically the Sassanid Persians, are prolific writers, and we get not just histories from them, but also really great poetry, all sorts of really good stories, histories that are preserved from other cultures, myths that are preserved from other cultures, all sorts of good stuff. Aristotle, was he chosen by the free market? No, he was not chosen by the free market, nor did anyone vote for him. So if you all do not already follow Aristotle, please do go give Aristotle a follow. This guy is crazy smart, and he's very generous with his knowledge, and is braver than I am, because he just sits and asks for people to put in questions and just fields them off the top of his head. It's a really good time, though. It's mostly philosophy-based, but if you know stuff about history or politics or economics or religion, you'll find a home in Aristotle's channel. Please do go follow Aristotle. He's a great guy. You got into poetry because of them? Yeah, man, it's good stuff. I love that. Oh, I've read so much of that stuff. I've got a couple of books of that in my my library at work. Okay, so yeah, no problem, absolutely. Okay, so Ardashir is going to start conquering stuff, and he's beating everybody up, and he's expanding everywhere. And what's really going to be sort of the point for Ardashir where he really has the moment and sort of seizes the day is in the year 224. There's a big battle at a place called Hormizdagon, which I know is a great name for a battle place. And Ardashir is going to defeat the last of the Parthian kings, this guy named Artabanus V, and kills him. And at that point, Ardashir takes the capital of Ctesiphon, and there's a little bit of debate about exactly when he gets coronated. Some people say 224, some people say 226, some people say 227. I'm in the 226 camp. If you really want to get technical about that, I'd be happy to explain why. But somewhere between 224 and 227, Ardashir is going to take the title Shah-Shah, which is notable and important. This is Shah-Shah, which means King of Kings. I am King of Kings. Which, by the way, Persian rulers had been using for centuries. Even prior to the birth of Jesus. I know a lot of people are like, hey, King of Kings, that's the Jesus thing, right? That was a title that had been around for centuries prior to Jesus being born. Who disrupts my coronation? +1, Aristotle streams are always entertaining, mostly because of me, but that's beside the point. Oh, vipers. Right? So once Ardashir takes over, he's got a little bit of trouble because not everybody inside of the old Parthian world immediately wants to bend the knee to this new guy. So he does have to spend a few years sort of mopping up and solidifying his rule on things. But by the time we get to 230, there's going to be a pretty epic moment where he's going to kind of, well, let's just say it. He decides that he can take Rome. He decides, I'm big enough. I'm just going to go take Rome. And in 230, he launches this really massive raid into the Roman province of Syria. I'm with you, KP. So from Ctesiphon here in Mesopotamia, up Mesopotamia, and into Syria. This is a Roman-controlled province. It had been Roman territory for, at this point, about 100 years or so. And this is a big deal because he comes in force, and the Romans get sort of blindsided by this. And the emperor at the time is this guy named Gordian III, who is able to put together an army, mostly because he had one sort of ready already. We'll talk about Rome probably next week, maybe 2 weeks. But Rome was going through a lot of trouble on their own, which is one of the reasons why Ardashir felt like it was time to strike. And Gordian's going to show back up with a big army, so we have Ardashir versus Gordian, and things are going bad for Ardashir initially, but then Gordian dies in battle. He dies in a battle, and the Romans are basically forced at that point to give up. They're going to have to basically say, hey, we understand that, we're at war, but our guy died, so we need to kind of go back home and find a new guy. In 230, this is the year 230, CE, AD, whatever you want to call it. So when this happens, the Romans sort of have to admit that Ardashir has a portion of this territory, and there's going to be a bit of a peace for about 2 years. The Romans and the Parthians, not the Parthians, I'm sorry, the Romans and the Sassanids are going to kind of stare at each other from across this little border. And Ardashir just decides that he's going to go sort of all in. And he sends an envoy to Rome that says, okay, here's the deal. You are going to give me all of the ancient territory that used to be part of the Achaemenid dynasty. So if a Persian at one time ruled this, you will give it to me. And what he's talking about is all of the Levantine region, all of Asia Minor, and Egypt. So he's basically saying, give me this. Or I'm not going to be pleased and I'm going to attack you again. And Rome is like, no, we're totally not going to give you all of that because that's like, a bunch. So here we go. In 232, we're back at war. And this is going to be a pretty bad war. But at the end of the day, Ardashir is going to come out ahead. Now, he's not going to be able to get everything that he wants because that's just, that's really just too much for him to even control. It was sort of silly for him to even try to think that he could take all of that. But it's not really going to work for him. But we do get lots of really cool images out of this. Specifically, this image. Oops, sorry. This is part of a relief at a place called Naksh-i-Rustam, which is one of the places that I would absolutely love to go. This is in modern-day Iran, and Naksh-i-Rustam is one of my sort of bucket list locations that I'll probably never get to go to because travel to Iran is not necessarily that wise. But this is a big relief, and what we see here, we see Ardashir on horseback. Below him, this is a Roman, and it's sort of maybe Gordian III, or it could be one of the later Roman emperors. Gordian III is probably a safe bet, but maybe it could be a later Roman as well. It really depends on exactly when this particular relief was made. But on this other side, what we see here is a horseback. Remember the big solar disc thingy? This is Ahura Mazda. And below Ahura Mazda, this is the bad god of Zoroastrianism, Ahriman. So we see both of these heroic figures trampling the bad guy, and we see Ahura Mazda handing a crown to Ardashir. So there's some good storytelling and imagery, right? Look, God has chosen me, and the way that... Are you really going to do it every time now? The way that we know that he has chosen me is that we have both conquered our enemies, and I am a great king. And look at my big scepter of power. Look at my big scepter of power. Look how sceptery it is. But anyway, this is a pretty cool relief. Again, it's Naksh-i-Rustam, and I would love to go there, and I'll probably never will be able to. Maybe if like I had the power to like freeze time in a bubble. If I could catch time in a bottle. That's a different story. Maybe I could get over there, but probably not ever going to happen. All right, so Ardashir, one more thing it is important for him to note here is that he does take over a lot of this area that had previously been fairly religiously tolerant, and a lot of the rulers, especially from Central Asia, had been kind of wishy-washy on exactly where they're going to be. We all know that Ardashir is a Zoroastrian. We know that he was a Zoroastrian, heart and soul through and through, and he is going to establish by law that Zoroastrianism is the official religion of his empire. So, important things to note. As a note, I have already talked way more about Ardashir than I needed to. I knew that I was likely to run my mouth too much on this. I am going to have to expedite my talking and not run my mouth so much about tiny little details. We need to get through the story. I really love this stuff. This is some of my favorite history. All right, so the next guy we get is a guy named Shapur, and he's going to rule for quite a while, from 240 to 270. So he's going to be really important for this particular chunk. So he had actually ruled for a couple of years with his father. Ardashir is going to die in 242. Tupac. Sometimes it's nice to just see someone who's not American be religiously intolerant. Wow. I get you, Aristotle. I mean, I see where you're coming from. I understand that. And it's not even necessarily that he was religiously intolerant. He was just very religiously overt. Now, there were lots of other religions inside of the Persian Empire, including a substantially large portion of population of Jewish people. So inside of his empire, you had Judaism, you had a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of Hinduism, Zoroastrianism. You even had a tiny little bit of Christianity, but then you had a lot of other, what we might consider indigenous polytheistic religions. I don't like using the word pagan very much. It has this very negative connotation. Perhaps too dark a joke to make. No. There is no such thing as too dark of a joke. Well, I guess there maybe is. Let's stay away from Holocaust jokes and genocide jokes, and everything else. Well, not everything else. A lot of other things are pretty okay. The fact that America is religiously intolerant is exacerbated by the fact that the people with the loudest mouths are very religiously motivated. Cave, you might be the only person that can make Holocaust jokes. I don't think I have any right to do that, and I would encourage other people not to. But you've got a different perspective on that than I do. So, anyway, Shapur. He's going to take over when his dad dies. His dad dies in 242. He's going to take over solo rule at that point. And this guy is going to be, like, immediately going after Rome. Just immediately. Just going to go after Rome. And there's a big fight in Rome between him and the emperor, and things go pretty nasty. The Romans, once again, sort of have to pause and sort of back away because the 3rd century is just horrible for Rome. They have so many emperors, and they just sort of go through them like one after another. They're constantly having imperial changes. So many big issues with the Romans in the 200s. But one of the big things that is going to come out of this particular campaign is that Shapur is going to take over and annex Armenia. And this had been a Persian goal for probably 150 to 200 years. And the Parthians had constantly been trying to take over Armenia and hold it, and constantly been after it. And this had been a casus belli between Rome and the Parthians about a half dozen times. Shapur is going to take Armenia and absorb it and hold it. And this is something that gets him a lot of credibility, and a lot of the people that had thought, these Sassanids, they're just sort of startups, they're never going to make it last. Now people are kind of like, I don't know, man. That's it's kind of a big deal. All right, so this is Shapur. We can see, once again, he's got the good headdress. He's got the sort of the Ahura Mazda solar disc kind of thing going on. He's got some wicked hair curls kicking out here. Big braided beard. Looks like grapes hanging off of his chin. But yeah, this is Shapur. And in this particular war, this is a war that lasts from 253 to 264 against Rome. The reason that they are so successful, and one of the reasons that Rome has to give up, is that Shapur even manages to catch Valerian. So the emperor at the time, this is like the third emperor that we've talked. Anyway, the Roman imperial situation, once again, is a giant mess. But in one of the big battles at the end of this war between Rome and Persia, the Emperor Valerian himself is going to be out on the field leading the army, and Shapur's army is going to capture him. And this is one of the sort of unfortunate stories of history, if you are a Roman, because Shapur at that point was so powerful. Legend goes, and this is even recorded in some ancient sources. We're not 100% certain if it's true, but a lot of people in the ancient world considered it to be true. The story goes that Shapur was so excited that he caught the Roman emperor that he decided to use this as a way to explain to people how powerful he was. And so he turned Valerian, the Roman emperor, basically into a footstool. And when he wanted to get onto his horse, he would call Valerian over, and Valerian would have to get down on all fours, and Shapur would step on his back to get on his horse. Now, that's a gutsy move, and that is that is some visual propaganda that is hard to overcome, right? Hey, who's that guy that Shapur is stepping on? Oh, that's the Roman emperor. Yeah. Rome took exception to this. They did. But not before very much happened. So we do have a fun little picture of this. There are pictures of the footstool thing, but specifically the surrender of Valerian. We have another really cool relief. Also, once again, at Nakshi Rustam, which is here. So here we see Shapur, and we know this is Shapur again because he's got these wicked, like big side of his hair or side of his head hairstyles. These really big balls full of curls. So this is the Emperor Valerian here in chains, and this is the guy that the Roman army chose basically to replace Valerian on the battlefield, a guy who becomes emperor under the name Philip the Arab, paying off Shapur to go away and stop trying to invade Rome. So Valerian is captured, and they have to pay this big indemnity. And here is Shapur going, look, I have invested all of this stuff because these people are horrible. It is really wild. It's one of my favorite ancient stories. It's like, well, I don't want to give too much away. Okay, I'll go ahead and give it away, but I won't give you the specific instance. At one point in the future, there's going to be a Persian emperor that captures another emperor of Rome and flays him alive and then displays his skin as a trophy of battle. I'm not going to tell you where, and I'm not going to tell you when, but we'll get there. You thought the Valerians were known for their dragons. Weird flex, stepping on the Emperor of Rome, but okay. Hey, a bad bird, good to see you. Everybody, please do go follow I Am Batbird. Great streamer here on Twitch, art streamer, does digital and traditional art styles. You won't have a bad time. You should go follow I Am Batbird. That's not an exhibit you want to see, right? You don't want to go to the Museum of Flayed Roman Emperors. Yeah. Yeah, Ramsey Bolton is some messed up stuff. The whole of the flayed man thing. The phrase "give me some skin" has really changed some meaning in the centuries, right? Okay, so the big war of Shapur goes on, like I said, from 253 to 264. And at that point, Persia is sort of ascendant. Rome really doesn't have very much of a response to them. And for the rest of his reign, the next 6 years or so, things are going to go pretty well for Shapur. There had been some new changes, though, including an important particular development. And this is going to be one of the weirder sort of things in history. And I don't know how many people are going to know about this, but this guy named Mani, who comes from the region of the Black Sea coastline, which is sort of right around in here. Mani is going to be an interesting fellow. He claims to at least be partly Christian, and he's going to go on to declare himself a prophet and start a religion called Manichaeism. And Mani did not get accepted very well in the Roman Empire, who at that point was effectively persecuting every Christian that they saw. And Mani was going to make his way down to Ctesiphon and actually joined the sort of retinue of the emperor. Sounds like it's going to be a problem. It is a problem. Figment, it is a problem, because remember, the Zoroastrians don't really like a lot of these other religions hanging around. They're going to sort of let them be there, but they're not really super happy about it. And when Shapur allows this weird prophet guy who sort of started his own religion to kind of take up residence in the capital, that doesn't go over so well. Sounds like an OG Rasputin kind of problem. It's very similar. It is very similar. It's a sort of backwoods guy that sort of has this air of spirituality around him. He's got sort of a mystique, and he's got some followers that are really, really devoted to his teachings, and he seems like he's talking some good sense, but he's messing up things at home. And the leadership of the Zoroastrian faith, the head priests, they're called magi. This is where we get the word magician from, by the way, in English. Also, the three magi, who are the people that, supposedly brought gifts to the baby Jesus. It doesn't actually say that there were three of them, and it's pretty clear that they weren't earliest Christians. They were Zoroastrian fire-worshipping priests. So I know that's ruining your holiday story. Also, they didn't show up at the nativity, so if you have a nativity scene with the magi involved, you cannot put them there. You have to do a conversion factor from the distance between Ctesiphon and Bethlehem to the height of your figure, and the average height of a Persian at the time that would be well-fed, you could probably say 5'6", 5'7", and then drive your nativity figures an appropriate distance away for them to be historically accurate. Get on with it! Okay. Anyway, the Magi, who are the leadership of the Zoroastrian faith, do not like Mani at all. Mani even tries to convert Shapur himself to Manichaeism. That doesn't go over so great. And Shapur sort of likes the guy and is tolerant of the guy, but when the Magi start trying to get this guy kicked out, Shapur is actually kind of taking offense to this. He's like, no, I'm running the show. I'm the emperor. You're the priest. You guys back the heck off. I'm running this empire. And the Magi don't care for that. They do not like the idea that the emperor can push them around and tell them what to do, because, they're the leaders of the religion. Every time he hears anything about the nativities, that's true. That is true. I am sort of a broken record. My holiday story was already ruined. Your holiday story was already ruined when you realized baby Jesus would have frozen to death in the manger if it had been born in December. Wizards never like being pushed around. This is correct. We want the Monty Lebowski. Oh man, that mysticism really tied the capital together. Anyway, so Shapur is going to die in 270, and in a weird sort of turn of events, his oldest son is not actually going to be his direct heir. His oldest son had been born from a wife that wasn't even an official concubine. She was sort of just a fling. And his oldest son was not going to be the direct line of leadership. His second son was. The problem is that his second son, when he takes over, is going to die about 6 months into his rule. From what all of the historians believe is almost certainly a natural cause. Kids and young people die all the time in the ancient world. It's not always like cloak and dagger, stabby stuff. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's not always. But the next acting emperor that we get is this guy named Bahram the First. And he is going to rule from 271 to 274. And you might wonder why we're talking about him if he's really only going to rule for 3 years. But there's a lot of stuff that happens during his reign. Your holiday story was ruined when you learned how babies were made. Well, that's not the right way that the story goes, though. All that stress got to him. Yeah, he was the heir apparent. So Bahram the First is this guy. Now that's a cool looking dude. He has abandoned the giant side curls of his father Shapur the First, but he's still holding on to the cool "I am chosen by Ahura Mazda" thing on the picture here. So Bahram is going to be in an interesting position because when his younger brother dies, the older brother, again, he's still not technically in line for the throne. He was not from an official wife or even an officially recognized concubine. So he has to have help getting onto the throne. Who do you think might be willing to help put a king on the throne if they can get their way? And if you guessed the Magi, you are correct. The leader, the high priest of Zoroastrianism at that time, manages to finagle the situation for Bahram to take over, and then immediately decides that the priesthood is in charge of everything. First thing to do, let's kill Mani. And Mani gets the chop. He slept with the fishes. And immediately after that, guess what? It's time to get rid of all those other religions. So Aristotle, if you're still hanging around, this is where the active Zoroastrian, anti-everybody else religious intolerance comes in. Because if the priesthood's running things, everybody's going to be Zoroastrian. So the Manichaeans, nope, they are persecuted. They're hunted down and killed or forced out. Also, all these Christians that had been sort of trying to sneak into our empire because the Romans were persecuting them over there, guess what? You're not welcome here either. We're going to start killing you and persecuting you. Now, for a long time, that's a very polished profile pic. It is. It's a really good coin. That's a drachma of his. So with the Magi in charge, they can sort of do whatever they want to. And there's going to be a growing feud, especially when it comes to where Bahram is sitting politically between Bahram and Rome, because Rome was sort of stinging from their earlier defeats, especially the whole Valerian as a footstool thing. That did not sit very well with the Roman emperor. And Bahram, and especially the Magi behind him, are going to start seeing some of the surrounding kingdoms as potential targets for expansion. And some of this border tension is really going to be indicative of a larger and wider Persian desire to expand. They want to keep growing. They want to take more territory. And Rome is not very excited about that. And when Bahram gets a little involved in this region called Palmyra, there's a state at that time called wrong button, called Palmyra, which sat basically right about here. A lot of it is in modern-day Syria. There's some of it which is in modern-day northern Iraq and Saudi Arabia, sort of right in here. And this had been sort of an unaligned third kingdom for a little while. The Palmyrans had grown in a little bit of power, but they were never particularly big enough to sway one side or the other, so nobody really cared too much about directly controlling them. But there's a dynastic dispute down in Palmyra, and Bahram decides that this is his moment to sort of step in, and he starts trying to push the Palmyrines into taking this ruler that is basically going to be his puppet. And at this point, Rome sort of sends the ultimatum to Persia, look, you're either going to stop messing around or we're going to fight you. And the Magi at the time are going to basically get Bahram to back down, and then things go weird. Right? This is one of those just moments in history where things just kind of go sideways. It's free real estate, right? Bahram is going to die rather suddenly, but before he does that, he's going to do a lot of cool stuff like make this big relief. Now, this is at another location. This is not the same location. This is not Naqshi Rustam. This is a place called Bishapur, which is another place that I would love to go. But we have a similar kind of image here. We have Ahura Mazda on horseback, and he has given the crown to Bahram over here on horseback. Look how cool this is. Look how cool the king I am. I am taking the crown. I am chosen by the gods. You have to worship me. Can I pass a get along or get on with it to the to the stream crowd here? Anyway, Bahram the First was already pretty old. I mean, he wasn't like in later age, but he was already a full adult by the time that he took over. He's only going to rule for a little while before he kind of kicks the bucket. And when he dies, it's rather sudden. And there is some wondering about exactly what happened there, but it's probable that he died from natural causes, but we're not 100% sure. It could be that things got squirrely, especially with these Magi, who were really in control and did not necessarily want to get involved in the big wars against Rome. They wanted to solidify their control of everything and persecute everybody that wasn't Zoroastrian and, kind of run things that way. Bahram wanted to go be like his dad and take over some places and kick butt, because, Anyway, when Bahram the First dies, his son, Bahram the Second, is going to take over. Bahram the Second is this guy. Then this is a stunning coin. I wish I had some of these Persian coins. They're hard to come by, but, Anyway, so here we have Bahram the Second. Again, the big headdress signifying that he is either chosen by God or perhaps even divine in nature himself. He's going back to the kind of cluster of grapes beard look here. I don't know exactly what they're supposed to get out of that, but such it is. So there's Bahram II. And Bahram II is going to be one of the first really big stumbling blocks on the way towards Persian superpowerdom. And when he takes over, it's not going to take very long for him to basically tick everybody off. He's going to tick off the nobility, and one of the reasons he's going to tick off the nobility is that he was not going to be controlled. I will not be controlled. I will not be in the driver. I will be in the driver's seat. I'm not going to let all these people push me around. I'm the one that's going to get to run things. And so the nobility, who had been chafing under the control of the Magi, were really hoping that this guy was going to be able to kind of, shirk off their control. And he's like, no, I'm going to be my own ruler. I'm going to make everybody mad. And he does. And this is actually going to cause a pretty big rebellion, including some of his own brothers and the Kushano-Sassanian kingdom, who are basically going to all stand up in rebellion and say, look, we're done. And even though Bahram is sort of, I'm going to be the big dog, he has to run back to the Magi and ask them to help him. He's like, you gotta get rid of, you gotta excommunicate all of them that don't actually have excommunication, but you've gotta come out and say that Ahura Mazda is on my side and that the gods are favoring me and that these other people are usurpers and horrible. And so there's this big civil war that stretches for the first several years of his reign, from about 277 to about 282. There's going to be a big war. And it's a civil war where on one side you have Hormizd, this guy that's the brother of Bahram II, and some of the nobility and the Kushano-Sassanians. And on the other side you have the supporters of Bahram II, the Magi, and the rest of the, sort of assorted Persians. You're going to be disappointed if you don't take beard styling tips from this stream. We're going to go see Eris next, and he's going to have like a curled, coiffed beard with a little like rubber band thingy hanging down, and then like a big sort of teased out puffball at the end of it. So while this big civil war is going on, the Romans are actually going to see this as a win condition. They're going to be like, oh, look, they're finally fighting and we're not. And so the Roman emperor at this time is this guy named Carus, and he's going to invade in 282, but it's a really brief invasion because Carus dies. And again, the Romans have such bad luck with emperors. This guy was actually winning and had a lot of momentum behind him and then just died in battle, and it sucks. Rome lost more emperors during this period of time than they had put together previously. During this period of time, they go through 50 emperors in about 50 years. And only 2 of them die of natural causes. The rest of them either die in battle or get assassinated. And this is what we refer to in Roman history as the crisis of the 3rd century, which we'll talk about in a very near future stream. So when the Romans invade, Bahram manages to sway some of the nobility back to his side. He's like, look, we can't be fighting with ourselves if the Romans are going to invade us. So get back on my side. And a lot of the nobles sort of give up on the rebellion. And in 283, he's going to capture his brother and kill him very publicly for his crimes. What better way to say that I'm the emperor than to kill your brother? That face forest better look lusciously groomed. So in 283, the Persian Empire had been pretty heavily damaged. They had fought in a civil war that had gone on for between 6 and 7 years, and they were in pretty bad shape. And the new Roman emperor, this guy named Diocletian, is going to take an advantage to sort of play a really interesting game of political chicken. So Diocletian, who had unified the Roman world and brought peace to the empire, moves his army over to what would be an invasion position to the Sassanid territory, and then sort of sends a letter over to Bahram and says, I think I'm going to invade. What do you think about that? And honestly, Bahram is like, I don't think that's a good idea at all because this would suck really bad. We're in bad shape. Our army is wrecked. Our money is just about spent. We've still got a whole bunch of hurt feelings. I just had to kill my brother. The Magi are back in complete control. I really don't want another Roman invasion. And Diocletian sort of responds with, well, wouldn't it be nice if you could make us friends again? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And so Bahram has to take some pretty drastic measures and effectively humiliates himself. And he's going to send word back to Diocletian that he was going to re-recognize the independence of Armenia. So this was sort of like the crown jewel of the Roman expansion, and Bahram II was going to give it up. And he's going to be like, if you don't invade, we'll let Armenia be independent again and you can pick the ruler. And this is pretty humiliating. This is like a big slap in the face. A big slap in the face. And Bahram is not going to get friends out of this. Just to be honest, he didn't have a lot of friends already. Everybody sort of thought that he was only out for his own good, and nobody was particularly convinced that he was on their side. And this is just making it worse because he's giving away the thing, right? It's the thing. It's basically if we're making a movie about two characters that are the personifications of Rome and Persia, Armenia is the MacGuffin for the entire movie, right? It's the Armenian Falcon, if you will. There's a reference to the Maltese Falcon, which is one of the first MacGuffin movies. If you have not seen the Maltese Falcon, you should totally go see it. It's a really good movie. I like it a lot. All right. So Bahram is going to die. And a lot of people are like, yay! But when he passes the throne down to his son, Bahram III, a lot of people are like, wait, we're not keeping that guy's family line, right? Because he was a horrible ruler. Is there nobody else? But we have this kid, Bahram III, who gets put on the throne as emperor, but that doesn't last. It only lasts part of 1 year before this guy shows up. Old Narse. Nope, gotta skip down the line. There we go. Narse, who rules from 293 to 302. So this is Narse. And we're back to the sort of flyaway hair. This is an investiture relief of him. You can see the crown over here that's being given over, but this is a portrait. I thought it was a pretty neat picture. Also, I do try to just use pictures that I can find on Wikipedia so that I don't get anybody basically arguing at me. Eris wishes he had a consort that would do fancy braids in his beard. Eris, I think that if you posted a Craigslist ad looking for a consort that would put fancy braid in your beards, I would braids in your beard. I guarantee you that you could find somebody to do that for you. I guarantee you that you could find somebody that would do that. That whole transfer of power thing is one heck of a hurdle. Yeah, it really is. It's crazy how frequently these just go completely awry. So Narse is actually a pretty old dude. He is Shapur's brother. So that makes him Bahram III's great uncle. And Shapur is going to... not Shapur. Narse is going to say, no. My brother's family line is dead. And they're like, but Bahram III. And he's like, I said that they're dead. And he actually kills his nephew. Just like, we're done. We're out of that. No more of that. And then Narse assumes the throne. And that's going to make some people kind of upset, because the Magi were pretty excited about that. You know, having a younger ruler that had a lot of malleability, you know, the Magi were pretty excited. So now Narse has to sort of win back the Magi. And that doesn't go over very well. He gets some of their support, but they're very skeptical. Also, he killed his nephew, so still kind of sketchy. And he's got to go do something that is going to prove his qualities, right? Your city has a lot of black people. You bet you could find a shop that would do it for you. That stuff's an art form, and it's super tough to do, though. Yeah, it really is. But I bet if you looked hard enough, you could find one. I don't know where the line for cultural appropriation is, though. I don't know if you would have the time to explain to somebody that you were trying to copy beard styles from people that were alive 1,800 years ago in the southern part of Iran. So, I don't know. Time for Narse, captain of Persia, to prove his quality. Pretty much, right? I've got to win them over to my side. I've got to give them a kingly gift to continue your metaphor. And unfortunately, that kingly gift is going to be Armenia. I've got to go get Armenia. So in 296, Narse is going to invade Armenia. And this is going to kick off a really, really big war. Because at this point, Rome has its act together. And this guy Diocletian had pretty much fixed the political issue by establishing something called the Tetrarchy. And I won't necessarily go super deep into that, but basically Diocletian's idea was, and this actually gets back to a question that Meg was asking kind of at the beginning of the stream, like how do you handle this big empire? And Diocletian said Rome was too big for one person to rule, so he broke it up and 4 people were going to rule it. And they're all going to sort of be emperors at the same time. But it was time for Rome to act. And when Narse decides to invade Armenia, the guy that is the king of Armenia, this guy named Tiridates, is going to get away and run off to Rome. And he's going to say, they're coming and they're going to steal Armenia back. You got to go get them. And at this point, stuff goes down. And at this point, I also get to put on the adventure hat. Dum-da-da-dum. So, for those of you unfamiliar, this is the adventure hat. And when I get to show you pictures of places that I have been or things that I have seen with my own eyes, I get to wear the adventure hat. And when we do that, we throw the lovely adventure hat emotes into the chat. And then there we are, Drop Bear. Good to see you, Drop Bear. Hope you're having a good one. And then I get to show you this photo. This is the porphyry statue of the Tetrarchy. So this actually has an interesting little story behind it. So this was something that was made basically as propaganda by Diocletian. So we have here Diocletian and Galerius, this guy who is his co-emperor. On the other side here, you can see the other emperor and his co-emperor, a guy named Maximian and Constantius. But this was made in Rome as part of a much larger porphyry statue set. And today, you can go see this in Venice. And you're like, okay, well, how did it get to Venice? Hey, Emmy, good to see you. Everybody, if you are not already following Color by Emmy, please do go follow Color by Emmy. The cute little animations that I have, like down there in the corner, the little adventure hatty guy, and the guy that's on my intro screen. I'll switch back to the intro screen here for just a second. That guy. And the layout that we have now, the new and improved layout from Adventures in History, was done by Color by Emmy. She is a great artist that does really good work and streams here on Twitch. Lots of varieties of art. You should go hang out. Really cool time. Hang out there. Literally brothers in arms. Exactly. So back to the column here. So this column was made in Rome, but it made its way over to Constantinople. And it got there because, well, basically, Constantinople, when Constantine made it, became the center of all looted art. So Constantinople is the original London Museum in England. It's where all of the stuff that people pilfered ended up. And Constantine brought all of the cool things to Constantinople. Well, that's still not Venice. So how did this end up in Venice? Well, basically, the short answer is the Fourth Crusade. At the very end of the Fourth Crusade, which takes place at the beginning of 1204 and runs for a couple of years, a combined Venetian and French army breaks into the city of Constantinople and loots basically anything that they can take, which is how this item, which was made in Rome and then looted to Constantinople, ends up looted and back in Venice. And this is actually a corner piece of St. Mark's, the really big church that's in Venice. So there's a fun story behind that little article there. Anyway, those two guys are the emperors of the East, the eastern part of the Roman Empire. And when Narse invades Armenia, Diocletian's having none of that. And so he gets together this really huge army and puts Galerius in command of it and says, go fight the bad guys. And this is going to be pretty devastating. The first battle is sort of inconclusive. The second battle is like, maybe a little Persia. But then we have this really big third battle at a place called Callinicum. And at this point, the Roman army gets trounced. And what looked to be almost a certain victory for Rome suddenly becomes a big question mark. And Diocletian finds out that Galerius had basically been punked by Narse. And what's really funny, this is a sort of another one of these great moments in history. Diocletian goes out to meet Galerius, who has to retreat. After Callinicum, Galerius has to run away. And Diocletian goes out to meet him. And as they're marching back to their sort of safe camp, Diocletian makes Galerius walk beside him. So Diocletian is riding the horse, down the road, and Galerius, who is ostensibly supposed to be one of the emperors, has to walk beside him while Diocletian rebukes him. And basically chews his butt out all the way back to camp. And everybody sees this, and Galerius is basically humiliated in front of everybody. And at that point, Galerius has this massive chip on his shoulder. Overlays by Emmy is a subsidiary of Color by Emmy. You should just go hang out with Emmy. If you do have the money to give to her, you should give her money. Even if you don't, though, you should go follow her stream and hang out in her chat. She's a really cool chick. Humiliations galore. Yeah, it's all about humiliating the emperors tonight. So they have to wait because Galerius had lost this giant chunk of the army. And they have to wait a year for reinforcements to show up. And during the second attack, Diocletian basically says, look, this is your shot. You're either going to go over there and beat those dudes and come back in victory, or I'm kind of done with you. So do your thing. We are being visited by a puppy. Would you all like to see a puppy? All right, let me get the puppy. Well, I gotta roll. Roll, I say. Come and see me. Come on. Oh, yes, there's the puppy. Hey, Kaylee. What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, thank you for the sugars. It's the puppy. Hello. Oh, you want me to scratch your neck? Oh, yes, scratch my neck. Oh, this is the best. Oh, yes, the neck scratches. Oh, my goodness gracious. You all can't see it, but her tail is waggling right now at like 1 million waggles per minute. Oh, hello. Hey. You're going to give me all the sugars. Oh, so generous. Okay. What do you want? Do you want something? Do you need to go outside? Well, go see Brittany. She'll take you out. Go see Brittany. Nutty dog. You bet Katie and Lala would be best friends? I don't know. Kaylee she's just really dumb when it comes to other dogs. She gets really excited and wants to play with them, but she doesn't really understand how to play. And like her version of play is, let me see how much of your face I can fit in my mouth. It's Kaylee. So she's named after Kaylee Fry, the mechanic aboard the Firefly ship Serenity from Firefly, the TV show. Kaylee is my wife's favorite character from the show, and Firefly is her favorite TV show. That's what Chopper does? Yeah, so I want to eat your whole head. And she doesn't mean anything by it, but, that's not what other dogs think is fun, and they get a little upset, and then Kaylee's just a giant chicken butt. And she'll freak out and then, go sit over in the corner with her tail tucked. Yeah, she's such a sweet character. Yeah, my wife is a big fan of Kaylee. And we have some art from Firefly on our walls in our office space. So, yeah. Firefly. Oh, yeah. You can take the sky from me. Anyway, so Diocletian sort of gives Galerius the what for. And Galerius goes back in 298. And at this point, they have the Roman army, which has been reinforced, and they're also going to get a big reinforcement from the Armenian army, who's going to sort of manage to get out of Armenia at least mostly intact before the Persians kill all of them. So they've got a much larger force now, and they're going to surprise attack Narses' army. And there's this big battle at a place called Salada in 298, and this is a resounding Roman victory. And they capture Narses' loot, so basically his amassed loot, because he had expanded into Armenia and he was looting the area. So they caught all of his money and his loot. They caught his harem. Anytime you capture a harem, that's one thing, but they also caught Narses' kids. And that's a pretty strong bargaining position. Hey, we beat your army, we captured all of your money, we have all of your wives, and we have your kids. What is Narses to do at that point? Cowboys in outer space, the brown coats will rise again. Never mind that Joss Whedon has a problematic history. Yeah, pretty much. That reminds you, the Funko Pop artist mentioned a few streams ago made you an Odai suit. Aww. Was any stuff seen as too crappy to do? No, like in war, it's okay. Like if you capture their kids and capture their wives and capture all their loot, that's just bonus. That's like extra icing on your victory cake, right? This is the flex to the flex. So Narses is defeated and has lost his money, his wives, and his kids. And Rome is like, okay, now you get to surrender to us. So please do give us everything that we want. And this is absolutely destructive for Narses' credibility. And it's called the Treaty of Nisibis. It just made their jobs easier. Yeah, it's like, okay, now we're not only winners, we're like uber winners, and you're like super losers. So now you will give us even more. All's fair in love and war and politics and religion and anything else you care to think of. Ethically speaking, I don't think Aristotle would get that would be a great topic to bring up in Eris's channel. Is all really fair in love and war? That's a deep question, and I don't think that it applies unless you take ethics out of the question. And at that point, if you take ethics out of the question, do we really even understand what fair is? Do we even really have like a fundamental concept of what is fair? So, I don't know. That'd be a good question to bring up next time we're in Eris's channel, though. Pizzas I can have. Being intolerant. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry there, Figment. So, the Treaty of Nisibis. What does Narses have to give up to get back what is ostensibly his? So, Persia has to give up any claim on Armenia, technically forever. Basically, the wording of the Treaty of Nisibis says that Armenia is permanently and eternally outside of Persian control. So it's basically worded to be without loophole. Not like, for the rest of your life, you will not claim Armenia. It's no, like Persia will never again try ever, 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 period. Ever, 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 period. For real, we don't mean any other time in the history of the Earth until the sun burns out and we get to the heat death of the universe can Persia claim Armenia again. Tiridates, the king that got ran off, gets put back in charge of Armenia. But this is the big kicker. Any land that Persia had west of the Tigris River, so the Tigris River runs right up here. So any land that they had on this side of the river, basically Armenia and all of Syria, which they had taken, they have to give up. Anything beyond the Tigris was completely given up. And that includes a lot of these really big cities that were sort of in this green region. So you can see right around in here, there's this nice green basin where there's ample rainfall and good farmland. That region was full of a lot of big trade cities. And Persia had to give up all of those. Ethics. I just rewatched The Good Place if you want a refresher. If you're really interested in actual ethics, the stuff that they cherry pick in The Good Place is a place to start. Also, by the last season, they had effectively given up on Western ethics and they had basically gone full Hinduism. If you haven't watched the last season of The Good Place, put your fingers in your ears or mute your audio for the next few seconds until you see me do like this again. So, spoilers for The Good Place, final season coming in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the entire series leads up to them creating this basically this new iteration of how to make people good and bad, and what they literally create as a purification of souls thing is effectively the system of samsara from Hinduism. The karma and the dharma thing is the dharma is the scale that they use to sort of give people the points. You got to follow the right thing and you get points. That's the dharma karma interaction. You get reincarnated until you get better. That's literally samsara. And then you get out the other side and you get to hang around in perfect eternity forever for as long as you want to before you go through the door at the end. That's moksha. It's literally just Hinduism. It's a copy-paste version of some of the really big popular versions of Hinduism. So at this point, spoilers for The Good Place are finished. Watching Squid Games is also a fun place to start with questioning things. It's also book 10 of Plato's Republic, The Myth of Ur. Yeah, see, we actually would need to talk about that because I don't necessarily know if Plato wasn't maybe copying stuff out of that. I don't know for sure, but that's a topic for another time, and I would love to sort of dive into that with you. Anyway, so Nisibis is really bad for Narseh. He doesn't last very much longer after this. This is the Treaty of Nisibis is in 299. Narseh holds on for 2 more years before he leaves rather suddenly, and that is going to be sort of all for him. But I do get to put the adventure hat back on one more time because I have another picture to show you. Adventure hat. It's pretty interesting when we get a multiple adventure hat stream. So I'm going to show you this thing. All right, so this is a frieze on one side of the Arch of Galerius. Diogenes Laertes says that the Greek philosophers were in contact with Egypt for sure, and that there are reports of gymnosophists and naked sophists, which is literally a reference to the naked yogis in India. Yeah, Eris, that's along the line of what I would love to dig into you. Not dig into you. I mean, you're a tasty guy, but I don't think I necessarily want to go that far. Dig into with you. That would be an interesting line of connection there. So this is a frieze, and what we see here is a big Roman army, and in the centerpiece here we have the Emperor Galerius on horseback, and this is the Persian Emperor Narse falling back on his horse, and the Persian army being trampled under hoof. So it's not just the Persians that get to draw the cool reliefs of their, bad guys being trampled under hoof. Now, this particular arch is in the modern-day city of Thessaloniki, or what used to be ancient Thessalonica. And I was there. This is actually the last trip that I was able to take prior to COVID hitting. And I went with our mod, Mac, in a lab coat. SPQR, sono pazzi questi romani. These Romans are crazy. So SPQR is Senatus Populusque Romanus, which is the Senate and people of Rome. I do like that particular translation, though. That's pretty great. Anyway, so Mac and I stayed in Thessalonica for a couple of nights, and I was able to walk around the city. Galerius also has a palace there whose remains are visible. Thessalonica is one of the more interesting cities we got to go to, and I'm really excited that I got to take that picture. And I'm really excited that I got to loop that in, because when I go to all these places, I take all these photos, and I never really know sometime if I'm ever going to be able to show them. And I was I was working on the sort of outline for tonight, and I was like, I'm talking about Galerius, and I'm talking about him winning against Narse. I've got a picture of that, so I got to go through and dig it out, and it was a really good moment. I'm glad that my adventures were able to edify this particular discussion. You got that from your mom, who also learned all of the naughty words in Italian. All right, ladies and gents, so that is our discussion for the night. Now, as always, that does not necessarily mean that we all have to run away and be done. That just means that I am done with my prepared statements for the night. So if you all have any history questions, either about this stuff or pretty much anything else, you are welcome to ask. If you would like to redeem any channel points, remember that below the chat rather. You are collecting adventure points, and there are lots of things in there to spend those on. And if you, I guess basically just if you want to say anything, now is the time to go. Otherwise, I think go for it, Evo, go for it. Is/was Armenia one of those times the same area of Armenia today? It was much larger in the ancient world. So the modern day country of Armenia is actually quite small. I'm experiencing all sorts of artifacts here. By the way, I figured out exactly why this is happening. This is mostly because of visual encoding. It's software related. I know what the problem is. I don't know how to fix it, which is unfortunate. I'm still trying to figure out exactly why it won't render this the right way. But anyway, so this is the modern day country of Armenia. It's very small. It's right here. Now, the ancient country of Armenia was significantly larger, and it sat all of this region right here. It included this region right here, which is called Lake Van, and it stretched over into what is part of modern day Turkey, into what is modern day parts of Syria and Iraq. It sat right around here, and it's a fairly large location. All of this stuff right here would have been in ancient Armenia. And there are a couple of countries that bordered it. This little triangular region right here was a country that was referred to as Lazica. There's another little country that there's basically this strip right here, which was Caucasian Iberia. Now, I know when you hear Iberia, you might think, oh, that means the peninsula that has Spain and Portugal. But actually, this region right here is, and historians will refer to it as Caucasian Iberia to distinguish. They just called themselves Iberia. But that's a great question, though. Because Armenians the last 100 years or so have been a pretty rough time. Yeah, so if you're talking specifically about the Armenian genocide that happened during, just before and during World War One, that was an attempt by the Ottoman Empire to effectively rid their entire area of ethnic Armenians. And yeah, that was pretty bad. They killed tens of thousands of people, and the official government of Turkey still denies that it happened even today. I will note, though, that President Biden earlier this year officially recognized the Armenian genocide as an actual genocide, and now the official position of the United States is that, yes, in fact, this was a genocide of the Armenian people, which puts us on the right side of history, and I really appreciated that, and I gave him quite a bit of props for that. I don't agree with everything that he's done, but that was the absolute right thing to do, no questions asked. Okay, so Vipers, that is not the that's not the redeem your own stream request. The sum of the adventure hat is basically to get me to put the hat on and tell a specific story. So you just want me to give you a little bit of commentary on the paper. Okay. The change in the religion in Turkish and Persian cultures happened in different times, but was it in the same terms of treatment by the Islamic Empire? You know, Turkish had to go through very bloody wars, but you can't see how that could have happened to the Persians. Okay, so it happened about 300 years through history. So when the Muslim Empire expanded out of Arabia under the Rashidun Caliphate... No, I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Thank you so much, Verm. Thank you very much for that. The 13-month streak is lucky, yeah. If you all want lovely emotes, like the Spartacus emote here, you should contact Vern, who drew the Spartacus emote for me. So there you go. If you need cool emotes, talk to Vern. And I'm volunteering him for stuff that he might not want to do, but I guess I can apologize for that. If Vern doesn't have time, he doesn't have to. I'm not saying that he has to, but if you're interested and he has time, you should check it out. Okay, so okay, Vipers, I'm with you. I'll talk, and while I'm doing that, I'll try to get some pictures that I can show. Okay, so the Rashidun Caliphate under so the Rashidun Caliphate is the first few caliphs that are of the family of Muhammad. So you have Muhammad, you have his father-in-law Abu Bakr, then you have Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Umar and Uthman were his cousins, and Ali is his son-in-law. So most of the stuff that's happening is being done under Umar and Uthman, the people that are coming out here to conquer Persian. So these are the same Sassanid Persians, but this is about 300 years, 330-something years past where we are right now. It's still the Sassanian Empire that's in charge. The Sassanid ruling family is still there. The guy that's in charge is a guy named Yazdegerd III, which I think is one of the greater names. It's unfortunate, though. There's going to be a big battle right around here. It's in the modern-day country of Jordan with the Roman Empire. It's a place called Yarmouk, and the Caliphate is going to defeat the Romans there. The Roman Emperor at the time is this guy named Heraclius, who had kind of gone a little bit mad, but that's a whole other story. And the Roman Empire had just won a pretty big battle against the Sassanid Persians, and the Sassanids were in a bit of a interdynastic struggle. So there were already some problems within the Persian Empire already. They had been defeated and humiliated by Heraclius. The guy at the time that was the emperor was Shapur II. He was no longer emperor. He immediately got deposed and kicked out, and horrible things happened to him. And then people were fighting over what was left. And the empire had been invaded by a group of people called the Hephthalites from over here. They're also sometimes referred to as the White Huns. So the Sassanid Empire was being invaded by this side by the Huns. They had been humiliated up here by the Romans, and then here comes this new, fresh, basically unexpected army out of Arabia, and were able to sort of wrap up the rest of the Sassanid army in one big battle that was pretty humiliating for the last of the emperors. And Yazdegerd actually runs over to the Hephthalites and is like, "Can you guys put me back on the throne?" And they're like, "Forget you. You don't have any money." And that was basically the end of the Sassanid Empire. So the Muslim armies of the Rashidun Caliphate were not taking on Persia at their height. They were taking them after a war that had stretched out between them and Rome for more than a century, that they had lost horribly. They were still recovering from a really big plague that had gone through in the 500s. They had multiple different invasions going on. So the Sassanian Empire was already sort of on the way down before the Muslims showed up and were able to take them over. Now, the issue with the Turkish people, the Turks are natives to this Central Asian region up here. And the Rashidun Caliphate was way gone by this point. And they had even gone past... even the family members of Muhammad had effectively all either been died out, or, depending on how you want to view this, taken away to heaven, if you were one of the particular interpretations of Shiite, that the final caliph or the final imam had been taken back up to heaven, depending on your particular interpretation of this. Anyway, and one of the things that the caliphate was really trying to find were good soldiers that were reliable. And at that point, most of the people that were in that region of kind of Central Asia were a mix of polytheistic deities, or this particular religion called Tingri. The god's name is Tingri. The religion is called Tengrism. This is sort of the popular religion of the steppe, including the religion of the Mongols. So the Mongolian people that would come around later were Tingrists. When the Muslim armies get exposure to the Turks, it's mostly by bringing them in as mercenaries. And the Turks are not necessarily going to be converted by force. They're going to be converted mostly by either being brought in as slaves and then converting, or being brought in and then sort of indoctrinated and converting. So most of the Turkish people that end up Muslim are not going to be done completely by force. Now, the Armenian region is forced converted, and a lot of this region here in the Caucasus attempted to be forced converted. But the Turkish people are basically going to come in, and then they're going to take over. And this is mostly in the mid and late 900s and into the early 1000s. And by the time you get to about the late 1000s and the early 1100s, the Turks had completely taken over, especially a group called the Seljuk Turks. And if you know about Salah ad-Din or Nur ad-Din, one of his family members, those guys were Turks, and they fought against the Third Crusade. It's all one big story, and I could ramble about this basically forever. How you remember all of this off the top of your head is beyond me. You can't even remember where you left your screwdriver 5 seconds ago. I have a really weird memory, and I can cram a lot of that stuff into my brain. I don't even know how it's all up there sometimes. It's just a weird thing. Okay, so I want to show you pictures of Tel El Hammam, but I don't want to show you anybody's face that's not my own. So I can put the adventure hat back on. Okay, so a few weeks ago, Vipers had posted a paper, an academic paper, about this particular theory that the site of Tel El Hammam had been destroyed by some sort of cosmic airburst. So basically, like a meteor falls down and explodes in the sky, and the shockwave and the heat that comes from that effectively destroyed the city. I have been to Tel El Hammam, and I have photos of the location, including a lot of the photos from some of the same places that were in that particular paper. So I'm going to do a lot of switching back and forth because, again, I want to show you pictures, but I don't want to show you anybody else's face that's not my own, because I don't want to, they're not my faces to show, right? Okay, so this is part of the top of the city of Tel El Hammam, and this is the Middle Bronze Age layer. So this is like in the excavation. And you can see here that there are multiple destruction layers going on here, and this is the base of a wall. It's like that favorite movie TV series you saw over and over after a while, the details stick. Yeah, Uncle Bill, it's like that. It's kind of like that. So one of the things that the paper mentions that is so weird about this site is that the walls are sort of chopped off at a certain height at the top part of the city. So the city itself is laid out in kind of a two level. There's a big tell, which is the false hill created by probably about 25 centuries of perpetual human existence. So you keep building stuff that's made out of mud brick, and over time you build this big hill. So there's a big city that's on the top of the hill, and there's a palatial structure on top of the hill. And then if you go down the back side of the hill, it levels out, and there's sort of a bottom lower city. So if you're on the top of the city, if you get to the Middle Bronze Age period, there's this weird area where the mud bricks basically don't exist anymore. And you find the bottoms of the walls, but not the top of the walls. And that's actually what we're looking at right here. So these are like the bottoms of these walls. That is some of the stuff in the walls. This is a big pile of dugout stuff. So this is standing on top of the tell, looking down at the region below. Jordan is not all desert. Go figure. Here's some more stuff. This is sort of on top of the tell. The last pictures were kind of down here on the actual flat level. And I'm just kind of clicking through the photos here to show you. But you can see how these walls are basically just chopped off. And they're not necessarily... you have permission to use photos with you in it in case you need to, want to. Thank you, Figment. I appreciate that. I still don't want to just blow everybody out, but we'll see. That's the break screen. All right, I'm going to skip ahead a few because I've got pictures of a lot of people coming up, and I don't want to show people's faces. I want to get to the ones that have the burn layer. All right, now one of the things that the paper mentions are these really remarkable burn layers. And if we're looking at the wall here, the way that a tell works when you're on an archaeological site, the top stuff is the youngest. So we're standing at the most recent period of time, and as you go down, you are digging backwards into history. So if we look at this layer, you can see here that there's this really, really thick and very evident char layer that goes all the way across the site. And one of the things that this particular research team did with this char layer was examine the contents of the char layer. And they found a lot of particular types of minerals that are consistent with both incredible pressure that happens very, very rapidly. For example, misstructures. I'm saying this the right way because I'm not necessarily the best geologist. But pieces of quartz that had their crystalline structure disrupted by very big pressure that happened very, very rapidly. And then they had a lot of minerals that are only made when certain other elements get burned at really, really high temperatures. So this particular layer here is evident of something that happened very, very rapidly with a lot of force and a lot of heat. And I mean like lots and lots and lots of heat. So potentially a blast, yes. Now, this is, shocked quartz. Yes, Uncle Bill, that's exactly correct. Thank you for supplying that term. I had forgot what they actually used for that, the particular term. Hey, Nix, good to see you. Yes, so that burn layer is real, and you can see it right here. Let me switch back over here to my face, and I'll click through and see if I have any more. Yes, okay, so this image here gives you a little bit more of an example. So if we start over here, you can see the burn starting over here, and it continues over through here. That burn layer continues. This is probably somebody digging a fire pit in a later period of habitation, which happens all the time. In archaeological digs, what you end up running into pretty frequently are people digging big holes that disturb the archaeological layers. These can be problematic, especially if they throw stuff in here, because it will put stuff that's younger in deeper layers and it'll throw off your continuity. But this particular burn layer is broad enough that you can see it running both sides of this fire pit, on around this corner here, and then back around to where we were. So this is a pretty uniform burn layer that goes all the way across this period of time, which roughly corresponds to Middle Bronze Age. So let me click back over here, and I'll go through some more photos and see if I can pick up anything else. Most of the rest of the pictures that I have are from the bottom part of the city, which was basically sheltered from the blast because, well, hypothetically sheltered from the blast because they suspected that the particular explosion was oriented in a particular way so that the majority of the backside of the low city would actually have been sheltered from the blast by the hill. They did not really... They had a lot of the excavation work being had it covered up while we were there. Let me switch to another set of photos that I have from that location and see if I have anything else that might be of value to show you. Dun, 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 dun. I don't think that I do. I mean, I have more photos of the site itself, but not any that are going to be specifically relating to that particular event. I don't know. Let me look at these. I have a different angle of that same burn layer, but that's not necessarily anything new. This is just a different angle of that same burn layer that we were looking at. In your attempts to dive a bit deeper, you got the impression that these papers were the culmination of over a decade of research and study. Yeah, so Uncle Bill, this particular location in Jordan has been the site of excavations going all the way back if you want to go back to when it was first even begun to be excavated, it's probably 80 or so years, almost 100 years. But like actively excavated by this particular group, that would have produced these people, this particular paper for about 25 to 30 years. The current expert on the site that was one of the main contributors to the paper had been sort of in charge, if you will, of the dig there for about the last 20 years. Yeah, so they've been digging at this place for a long time. And there's a lot of interest at this site because of a parallel between what potentially happened to this story and what happened to the ancient city of Sodom based on the either Jewish or Christian account, depending on which version of the scripture you're reading. In the Christian book Genesis chapter 9, there's a story that the city of Sodom and the city of Gomorrah were really, really horrible, and God destroyed them with fire and brimstone from heaven. So there's a lot of interest in this city from lots of different angles. And there had been this theory that this location was the city of Sodom for a couple of decades before this paper ever came out. And okay, so let me say this very delicately, and I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes here. There is a lot of interest by certain groups to either prove or disprove Christian and Jewish scripture. And these groups are consistently looking for archaeological evidence that will either confirm or disprove particular scriptures. And these get very politicized, and these get very antagonistic at times. So there are a lot of feelings wrapped up in what's going on at Tel El Hammam. A lot of the criticism you have seen act like this is a sudden scammy revelation. And a lot of that is because because the knee-jerk reaction for a lot of these people, and I don't want to speak for everybody, so maybe I should say one knee-jerk reaction to this might be, ha, I told you the Bible was true, ha. And one knee-jerk reaction might be, ha, this is a plausible secular explanation for this particular religious event. Your religious event didn't happen, ha. Were there any alternate theories for the burn layer? Absolutely. And that's where I think the paper did a really good job, because it did go through all sorts of other potential issues. Could it have been burned down in a war? Could it have been just burned down? Ancient cities are full of wood and combustible materials. They just burn down sometimes. You know, it gets dry, there's a lightning strike, everything burns down. It could have been set on fire, some sort of arsonist activity, not necessarily by military. It could have just been, you know, some kid or some cow kicks over a lantern in Chicago and half the city burns, right? It could have been something like that. Their work in the paper went through about 9 or 10 different potential scenarios, and based on, and let me say this carefully now, based on their particular analysis of the contents of the burn layer and the stuff that they found there, they concluded that the best plausible explanation was some sort of cosmologic explosion and air explosion impact thing. Whether or not you believe that is completely up to you. You're welcome to go read the paper. It's in the Discord. You throw up the link to the Discord, Discod. If you want to go read the Discord, you're welcome to. You're welcome to. And we shall build a new city in the ashes of the old. Very much so. Very much so. Because there are habitation layers at Tel El Hammam that go on for centuries after that. There's a gap, but then they come back. Because it's really close to a lot of water sources, and there are not a lot of water sources in the Jordan Valley. You stay close to the water. You just do. It's definitely the coolest explanation. Oh, yeah. You know, anytime a meteor, or I guess what would be a meteorite at that point? I can't remember. It changes its name once it gets into the atmosphere. I can't remember exactly which one it is. But yeah, that's a really cool explanation. All right. Anybody got anything else? Those were both really great. I love the little tangent stuff like that. Okay, so I am not seeing anybody else popping up with the questions. So I think it might be time for us to go do a raid. And let's see who's live. Let's see if anybody's around on the Twitch. Probably not live anymore. Probably not live anymore. More so than God is ticked. When does history become history? I don't know. Tomorrow? That's a great answer. Eris just started. Yeah, Eris just did start. We rated Eris last week. I do try to spread the love around. I try to not raid the same people multiple times. And I'll even explain why. First off, because when I was just starting, I got a lot of people to... I didn't get a lot of people. I was gracious enough to have a lot of people raid me from a lot of different backgrounds that brought a lot of different people to my room and got me some exposure, and I greatly appreciated that. So now that I have you all lovely people that are hanging out with me, I like to pay that forward. So I actually see where we're going to go raid, because we have not been able to raid this guy for a while. And he has started an Inktober challenge, so he'll be streaming every day this month. Scott Manley scoffed at the idea of two such events found in the same part of the world, but I think he overlooks that so much of our archaeology happened in that region anyway. That's a fair point, Uncle Bill. And even two events in nowhere are close in time if publications are. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, the perception of closeness is not the actuality of closeness, right? What happened in 1971? I don't know what happened in 1971. What did happen in 1971? All right, anyway, we're going to go raid Studio Dogby, who is a really cool guy and a great artist and a friend of the channel. So when we get to Dogby's room, well, are we going to go raid Studio Dogby? Did he just go off? Oh, no. Ah! Crud! We can't go raid him because he just went offline. Dadgummit. Oh, well. That's okay. We'll see who else is around. Let me give him a shout out. If you don't follow Studio Dogby, you should go follow Studio Dogby. He's another guy that really loves history. He's very knowledgeable, likes movies, likes TV, also does really great art. He'll be streaming basically every day this month, so you should go follow him. All right, so we can't go raid Studio. Something went wrong. Yeah, I know, because he's not there. So we're going to go raid Daniel Landerman, because we have not raided Daniel in what the people in South Mississippi would call a coon's age. We haven't, because raccoons apparently live forever. I don't know. Some myth. People are crazy. Anyway, we're going to go raid Daniel. Same thing. Our battle cry is adventure. We're going to throw those lovely adventure hats in the chat. Daniel is a great dude, a really good artist. Is just starting out, so let's bring him some love. Currently has one viewer, but we're about to change that. So thank you all so very much for hanging out. I had a great time. Lots of great questions. Lots of good involvement. This is the stuff that I love. This is really the stuff that I kind of get excited about. So thanks, everybody. The next time you'll see me is going to be Tuesday, and the raids are suddenly not working. Why are the raids not working? I didn't cancel. I don't know what's going on with the raids. It keeps telling me that something, quick action, something happened. Let's try it one more time. Anyway, I'll be here next Tuesday night for a viewer request stream. We're going to be talking about where the Nazis went and sneaked out of Germany after World War II. We'll be back next Thursday with Adventures in History, potentially talking about Rome, or maybe talking about something a little bit interesting that's not something that I initially planned, but I might be able to sneak in. Otherwise, we'll be back on Thursday for sure. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night, and I will see you around the bend. Take it easy.